Hello, and thank you for watching Sabina Reefing. This week we're going to go over wire management and electrical safety. Hello, and thank you for watching Sabina Reefing, where we go over product reviews and how-tos, livestock care and selection, maintenance, tips and tricks. Come on, let me show you. There's two main hazards you have when you're working around saltwater and electronics. The first one is fire, and the second one is electrocuting yourself. When you have saltwater and electricity, there is a possibility of fire. Inside of all of these pieces of electronics, there's plastic, there's other flammable components, and when the salt water hits it and it causes a short circuit, it can draw a large amount of current, which causes a lot of heat. So it can set fire to the plastics. Just about everything burns at some temperature. So what I have here is a regular little switchable outlet. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is people setting this flat on the bottom of their aquarium and then plugging everything into it. What happens is the water runs straight down into it and into your electrical outlet. Don't do this even for a day. You could burn your house down. It's really that bad. And it's so simple to fix it. Mount it up on the side. So you can get a piece of plywood. I've used PVC, expanded PVC, which is a little more expensive than wood, but the nice thing is it doesn't ever wear out. They also have Xterra, which is a particle board that's mixed with plastic and it's waterproof. You can use that for making a board, but mount it on its side and have the wires come up into it. So that way if water hits it, it doesn't run down into it. If water hits it, it won't run up to it, it will run down. Like this. Notice the cord's like this? I would never mount this like this. I'd mount it like this. So now, if water falls on this cord, it runs down. This is commonly referred to as a drip loop. Lots of people will do it where they have, if they do have something coming from up above, they'll have it come down and then up and in. Personally, I would rather just mount this higher and have the wires come up to it. Preference. As long as you have something so that the water has to go against gravity, you have a good chance of not setting fire to your house. If you make a drip freeway, as Ryan from BRS calls it, you're running the risk of electrocution and fire. I would never mount something like this where the water can go run down the wire. And this is definitely the worst. I actually, as a very early reefer, well, I'm just gonna say that I'm not even sure I was a teenager yet. I set one like this and had a electrical fire happen in my room, which I quickly threw away the electrical outlet and moved it because I was embarrassed and I didn't want to lose my fish tank. So do not set them like this. You will cause a fire, and it's hazardous to your family, to your health, and to your aquarium. For the second one, I prefer to use actually grounding probes. So this is a very simple plug. It plugs into like what would be a normal AC 110 adapter, and then you drop one in your fish tank. What it's designed to do is when there is either eddy currents, which is what happens when magnetics interact with something that's conductive, and they can actually cause currents without having a direct short. When there's eddy currents and or if there's an actual connection with maybe a pump that's failed, which has happened and has happened to me. I'll tell you that story in a second. It'll take those currents and instead of going through you back down to ground, it'll go through the electrical wire to ground, which saves you from getting electrocuted. What will happen when you have a component fail and you have one of these grounding probes in there is it'll trip the breaker on your house. So this isn't a GFCI, this is just a path for the current to go through that isn't you. I've used them on my aquariums for a very long time. They're very safe, they're very reliable. The other option, which is UL and is probably a better answer if you're concerned with your health and safety and not your aquarium as much, is going to be a GFCI breaker. The problem with a GFCI breaker, which is what you'll find in your bathrooms and your kitchen, is they can be temperamental with anything with a large power supply. They see current going out, going to someplace and disappearing, and they trip on that. So like my Radion lights always trip my GFCIs. So I actually don't use GFCI on my lights and my hood. GFCIs are very, very good. They are fairly reliable, but they're not 100%, and they have been known to cause intermittent trips. So I can't advise not to use a GFCI. It is absolutely to code and probably the safest way to do it, but I don't use GFCI on everything on my aquarium. I do use GFCI on some things on my aquarium. When you do have a GFCI trip, what's going to happen is that entire circuit's going to shut down, and you'll have to go in and you'll have to manually press the reset button. There are some notable power supplies and power adapters, outlets, and also some extension cords that do have GFCI if you want to add them to a component or two. A lot of people don't really care about electrical safety when it comes around being around their aquarium. They kind of pile up their extension cords. And I have worked on systems up to 6,000 horsepower, 600 volts, 6-phase, 12 pulse DC and AC drives for most of my adult life. The worst electrocution I had was working on my fish tank. So the story was that I came in, I was living at my father's house. I had that 150-gallon aquarium that is now my ULM, and I was splashing around in the water. I was wearing my big thick work boots, and there was water on the floor. And I said, man, it's really hot, because we were running the air conditioning, so it was like 90 to 100 degrees inside the house. So I put on some board shorts with the intention of swimming after I finished cleaning my fish tank. And so I stepped into a puddle of salt water, which, for people that are electrically savvy, I stepped into a very good ground. And then I stuck my hands into the fish tank, which was sitting on a wood stand, which is an insulator. So I was the best path from my fish tank to ground. And I had a shorted out power head. Won't mention the brand because it really doesn't matter. This could happen to just about any of them except for the MP40s. The low voltage ones, the DCs and the wouldn't have been quite as bad as the 110 volt ones. So I stuck my hands inside the fish tank, it got a hold of me, and it hurt pretty bad. I let out a less than manly yell and ended up falling to the floor. So I highly recommend at least using the grounding probe. If I'd used the grounding probe, it would have sent the currents through the ground probe, tripped the breakers, my whole fish tank would have been off when I got there, and I would have had to figure out why. If I had used the GFCI, it would have tripped, and I would have known something was wrong and had to figure out why. So if I had used either of these paths to protect myself, I wouldn't have gotten electrocuted. And that's from someone that works in the electronics field. So please do protect yourself with, at the bare minimum, a grounding probe, and a GFCI is not a bad safety in most cases. And more fun is cleaning up the wiring. What I got right here is some wrap. You can get this at most of your electronic supply stores or Amazon. I'll try and put links for everything that I'm putting here. Most everything is on Amazon, so I'm going to try and find it on Amazon if you're looking for it. So basically you just wrap this around a bundle of cables. This is great for the bundle of cables that usually runs down the back of your aquarium, down to the sump or wherever your controller or power is, or runs up. For me, I have a spot between my main control panel and also my sump area where I have panduit here, and plumbing, so I don't have enough room for panduit to come in the sides. So I'm going to use this to wrap around the panduit. Just as important as knowing what to use to clean up the wiring is knowing what not to use. These are zip ties. I use these every day. They are one of the best inventions on planet Earth. I don't have a single one around any of my aquariums, and I'll tell you why. So when you plug a zip tie in, you hear the ratcheting mechanism. You can never get it off. So that means while upside down, having a problem with your fish tank, you have to go get a set of diagonal cutters to try and redo this. And if you wrap it and then go, oh shoot, I need to fit one more in there, cut it, go get another one. So they're not ideal around aquariums where we end up adding power heads, and we all make a lot of changes. I've said that I was never going to change after the beginning, but you know, I'm just like anyone else. Better option. This is a Velcro zip tie. They come in bundles. Velcro tie. So you can you have a couple of options. One, if you got a wire, pretend the screwdriver's a wire, you can wrap it around the one wire, like so. And then you can coil the wire up and wrap it around. And then you've made a nice little tight bundle. And when you go to change where that piece of equipment's going, you just unzip it. Two, you can just wrap it around a bundle of wires to tighten them up, which is what I use these primarily for. And the third one, which I really like, is get yourself a stainless steel screw, or I guess it doesn't have to be stainless, but if you're in a saltwater aquarium, just go invest in a couple stainless steel screws. It's like $8 at Home Depot. and you can put a stainless steel screw right through the Velcro. Now what you've got is you've got something that you can tie up to the frame on your aquarium, and then when you unroll it, it's still stuck there, so you know where to put the wire back to. That seems to be the most useful. Sometimes instead of using this screw to the side, I also got these at Home Depot or whatever your big box hardware store is. Basically, they just have sticky back tape on the back, and you can just stick them down to wherever you want them to be, and they will pop a wire in it and you're done. What's nice is, again, you can pop a wire in and out of these as you change the way your system's set up. Another important one when it comes to cleaning up your wire management is actually how you mount most of your equipment. Lots of us end up changing the equipment that we use every couple years. So I like to use Velcro with the sticky back. These work out perfect because you can stick the piece of equipment down, stick it on there. It's secured, nice, it doesn't fall off, but when you go to change it, you can just peel it off, put the Velcro on something else, and the sticky on this one is good enough to hold something, but not so good that I can't get it back off my board after I'm done. So I really like using Velcro to secure things over screws. Sometimes screws are required, especially when you're talking the big power supplies. Maybe the EB832 off the Neptune systems, you really need to secure that with screws. But if you're just doing a little tiny solenoid or something, Velcro works great. One of my favorite tools when you're trying to clean up wiring is a labeler. It makes it much easier when you're working under the aquarium to know whether you're pulling out the skimmer, the pump, the refugium light. I like to use this Bradley labeler. It makes it very simple. You press one button after you type out what you want, clip it, undo the sticker, which is the hardest part, put it on a wire, wrap it around. Now it's labeled. So this one's about $100. I'll put the link in the description for Amazon, Home Depot, or wherever I happen to find it. So if you want one of these, they are awesome at $100. There is cheaper options too. You can always just simply take a piece of tape. If you have really legible handwriting, write on it, put the tape around the wire, and then cut it. That'll leave you no sticky edges, and it looks pretty clean. It's not ideal, but it's much more budget friendly. And there is a third option. You may have to change the way you're eating though. So you take the bread and these little ties, snap it right around the wire. You will have to have very small legible writing in order to write on it, but they work as a great wire labeler. The last one that I use a lot around my aquariums is Panduit. It's basically a channel that instead of making beautiful harnesses and tying all the wires up and making it look all nice, you can just shove them into this Panduit and snap the cover on, and it hides all the cords behind it, which works out really, really nice for having a very clean install that's very easy to modify and very easy to disassemble and reassemble. One trick with Panduit is if you put a 6-foot piece of Panduit, trying to pop that off, keep all the wires in place, and pop that 6-foot piece back on at the same time is very difficult. So what I like to do is I'll actually cut them into about 14 to 16 inch pieces. You could do 12 inches, whatever you like, and then you can put multiple pieces back up there. It looks just as clean, and yet it's a lot easier to reassemble after you make some changes. Thank you for watching this episode of Sabina Reefing. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, like, subscribe. We have more videos. I've got 2 right here. One of these is Google likes, and one of these I think you might enjoy. Subscribe. See you next time.